And we're live.
Yeah, we are.
Yekemi, how are you?
I'm great. I went for a walk this morning and the weather is nice, fingers crossed. So yeah, I'm all good. Thank you.
Both had our morning movement, and now to start our working day, we are here to talk about visibility, personal branding, this notion of how do you go about getting your work in front of the right people, seen by the right people. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, and I know that you are a LinkedIn queen of sorts. So I'll say a very warm welcome to all the folks who have joined us from Yekemi's network. My name is Lauren Curry. I'm the founder of UpFront. And Yekemi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Lauren. So I'm Yekemi Otaru. I'm based in Aberdeen, Scotland. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm also the Chancellor of the University of the West of Scotland. And I wear a bunch of other hats. I support a bunch of charities. So really, really delighted to be here. I think one thing I'll say about myself is I've changed careers a few times. I've gone from engineering to marketing to entrepreneurship, and I'm all about that non-linear career path. So yeah, supporting everyone out there who's on the same path.
Yes, squiggly careers, as Helen and Sarah Amazing F have taught us to call them.
Yeah.
And so some of you might have met and heard Yekemi at Upfront and Centre's conference in March, where she took to the stage to talk to us about personal branding. And you were also on our virtual stage at our masterclass last Thursday, where I know so many people were deeply inspired and touched by the truths, I guess, that you told about your squiggly career and your relationship with self doubt and confidence. So that leads me to my first question, which is about your journey with visibility and learning to put your work in front of the right people. Could you tell us a wee bit about that?
Yeah. Gosh, I think it probably started maybe 2007 when I started blogging. So some people might remember blogger.com and all that kind of thing. And that's when I started writing. And I started at that point, I was writing some poetry, but really I was reflecting on what turned out to be this squiggly career. I didn't know what it was at the time. I just knew that I was in an engineering role, but I had other interests and I felt like my passion was elsewhere. So that was my first dip into kind of that online visibility and writing. And I found that people resonated with what I was writing, and people liked to read what I was writing. And so I just started writing. I think I used to write every single week. And then when I really came to move careers from engineering to marketing, and I had done an MBA, LinkedIn became, I suppose, the platform where I grew up, if that makes sense. So as an engineer, I joined LinkedIn groups that were about marketing, about social media, and I was really just there listening. And through those groups, I was able to interview up to 12 business leaders who were like VP of marketing or social media managers within their organizations to learn from them as part of my MBA. So I started putting my work and my findings on LinkedIn groups. And I just got really excited about this opportunity to go online and just talk. Before that point, to be able to get that sort of audience, you would have to physically go into hundreds of rooms and go, "Oh, hello, I'm Yekemi. This is what I've got to say," and get on a flight and go somewhere else and do the same thing. And suddenly, I found out with these online platforms that I could share my journey. I didn't always have the answers. In fact, most of the time, I didn't. But it was a conversation. It was really about engaging people and getting them to share their experiences. So that was my kind of journey into that visibility and sharing my work. And yeah, the rest is pretty much history.
Yeah, we've got something in common there with our stories because my kind of journey also began with a blog, probably 2007
Mm,
time on WordPress. And, for a long time, it was only my mum who read it. And she used to message me and say, "You feeling okay? You've not posted anything for a few days. Or you've got a spelling mistake on your second paragraph." And it's,
Oh,
mine was also connected to my studies. And I think that's something that I encourage any student, no matter, where you're at in your kind of academic career, to document and share your process and your learnings with the world. I think it's a really easy win to attract people who are also interested in what you're studying and what you're learning about. But something I often think about is how it's different for people who are starting now. The
yeah.
people reading this or listening into this conversation thinking, I want to put my thoughts on the internet and I want to talk to people, find like-minded people, see if my thoughts can add value. And it's like, is it blogging, do you think? Because the market and our technology is very, very different from how it was. So what would your advice be to somebody who's, looking to start that journey now?
Yeah, gosh, you're absolutely right. It's totally different. And if there's anyone watching us now or even later that is like, yeah, I blog, or I would like to put my thoughts, my finding, or document my journey, feel free to drop something there in the chat and we
Mhm,
can see kind of where you're at. But yeah, if someone is starting today, there's so many different ways to get visibility. Blogging was obviously kind of where it started for both of us, Lauren. But if I was starting today, I would do a lot of research around where my target audience is hanging out.
mhm,
I don't know that my target audience were really hanging out on blogger.com at that time. It's coincidental. People just sort of find your article based on maybe keywords or
mhm.
if they blog as well, and then Blogger will suggest your blog to people. But I think today it is easier to be that laser focused on your audience. So once you understand who is my audience, right? Are you trying to reach women who are trying to change careers? Maybe that's what you're trying to do. Or you're trying to reach people who are moving from engineering roles into management roles. Who are the people that you're trying to reach? I didn't really think about that back in 2007. I just started writing.
Same.
And then, yeah, and then understand where these people hang out. So if these people are Twitter users and you found that most of these people tend to be on Twitter or they tend to have LinkedIn profiles and they are active on LinkedIn, then you sort of answered your question there that okay, so I need to be on these platforms. If your audience isn't on, say, Instagram or Snapchat, then you don't need to be on there.
Mhm,
Okay. So once you understand who your audience is, where they hang out, then you can start looking at the format of this content and how you reach them because there are so many different formats. Yes, blogs are still in, um, but yeah, it is quite saturated. So you have to be, I suppose, offering something quite unique. And I always say that because it's you writing the blog, it's not going to be the same as what somebody else has done, So even though, yeah, there are a lot of blogs out there and it feels quite saturated, I encourage you to find your unique value. What is different about your perspective and put that at the forefront. And
mhm.
then you've got video, right? And so a lot of people are doing video. So what we're doing now is a channel, is a kind of format to share content. YouTube might be a way. On LinkedIn, you can, apart from LinkedIn Lives, you can record short videos. Have an understanding of how your audience consumes content. Podcasts, for instance, are a real channel for a certain type of audience. Newsletters, you can do those now, and platforms like LinkedIn have made it easy to do newsletters. And I think Medium for a long time was a way that people kind of had that kind of newsletter type content where you could write this kind of articles on a platform that was, linked to Twitter. So when you know who your audience is and you know where they hang out, that will inform the sort of format. And it might not be a blog, it might be videos, it might be short little articles, it might be that you develop content in the form of documents, PDFs, where you explain a process or you teach something. But I think the primary goal at the start is to really understand who your audience is, where they hang out, and then the format and content begins to play into it.
Yeah, it's really sound advice because I think I witness people getting so tangled up with what is the best platform to choose. Like, what platform should I be in? What platform should I be on? I need a brand, I need a URL, I need a strategy. And really, I think all of that is a distraction and usually are used as a form of procrastination. I say once you've been showing up and writing once a week for 6 months, then maybe you can think about that. But at that point, that's not the problem to be solved. The problem to be solved is, how can I turn this into a daily habit and remove the resistance so that even in the days that I don't feel like it, I'm still showing up and I'm still contributing. And I think, that's at the very core of the work that we're doing at Upfront and how we'll be supporting the women who join Bond 7. There's a lot of mindset work to do around the idea of putting yourself out there, being visible. And this is the bit that I'm kind of inherently fascinated by. And it's so interesting to me to hear what those barriers are. Like, I heard some folks in the Global Bond yesterday saying there's a new barrier that has emerged around our AI. Like, I don't want AI to impersonate me. I don't want AI to steal my ideas. And I think, for me, I see the internet is like a city. There's places in that city where you could go and you might get mugged and you might have a hard time and not a fun experience. There are also places in that city where you could have the best night of your life, meet friends keep forever, get a job offer. So it's about understanding like how to navigate that space. So what would you say to folks who are in a place where intellectually they understand the benefits of visibility, putting your work out there, building a community around yourself? We know it's going to increase your network, increase your access to opportunities, increase you becoming known for a person who does a thing or knows about a thing, but they're kind of consumed by the fear of, what if I get critiqued? What if there's backlash? What if somebody steals my ideas? What if nobody notices? That's often the one that's very real that we don't like to say aloud. And then it'll just be tumbleweed.
Like, am I talking to myself type thing, which I had for many years. It's like an echo chamber. Like, who is out there who can hear my thoughts? They're really valid things to be thinking about. And I think I went through that at the start, and sometimes I still do. Like, am I banging on about this and just, who cares, because I don't want to care kind of thing. But I think the first step is getting an understanding of your unique value. So what is it that you want to say? What is that idea, that vision, that concept that you want to get out there, and really fine tune what that is. In terms of barriers, I find that people put more weight on the barriers on the internet than they do with barriers in real life. Because everything you said, Lauren, are barriers that you get in real life. In real life, people will steal your ideas. I mean, in real life, people will not listen or criticize you, right? So these are not like special barriers for the internet. It's just any time you put your hand up, stick your neck out, there's a possibility that someone will say, that's rubbish. That doesn't make sense, or why have you said that? So I think it's really about being open to the likely positives that come from you sharing your ideas, being aware of the negatives, but not letting that hold you back. Okay, so knowing that when you share an idea, you are potentially polarizing a community. So there'll be a bunch of people that agree, that will be behind you, and there'll be a bunch of people that don't. So I think it's really about building a community of people that that are on board with what you're saying, are keen to listen, open up conversation, be willing to interact with people that maybe don't have the same view, but hear them out and have a healthy interaction with those people. I think if someone is already bought into the idea that, yeah, I see how visibility and personal branding can help me and can help my cause, but they're maybe worried about, well, what if people don't agree? What if nobody cares? I think that is highly unlikely, because you care. There's certain people out there that care, and the key there is to be consistent. Don't worry so much about quality at the early stage. Is what that's my view, that at the very early stage, don't worry so much about the quality of what you're putting out. I think being consistent is more important, because that helps you build a habit. And we even know from like marketing research, for instance, that it takes 19 times for people to see a brand or an idea for it to actually register. 19 times.
19.
Oh, well, it's now 19.
Yeah.
For people to see, for people to be like, oh yes, I recognize that.
Yeah.
And so you might be feeling like you're repeating yourself, like, oh, I already said that last week. But actually, a whole chunk of people who it's just not registered yet, and they haven't actually bought into it. So yeah, so don't let that hold you back. There's always a reason not to do something. But I think if your cause and what you believe in and your idea, you feel like it's important enough, definitely work on that consistency first and then build on that.
Yeah, I really like the idea of it's quantity over quality, because so if you choose to join Bond 7 and work with me and Yekemi on this topic and many other topics around under the kind of umbrella of confidence and visibility, one of the things that we spend time on is writing, like putting your thoughts down. And you might choose to just share them with the bond, you might choose to share them wider. But the writing that we do, I call it very low stakes writing. So it's like, tell me about the last book that you read. Tell me about what you wish you had known at the start of your career. Tell me about, the number one thing that you've learned since becoming a parent. It's things that feel fairly safe to explore and talk about. And I think you can, it's almost like that's you doing the warm up, you're building the muscles, so that when it comes time to talk about something where the stakes might be higher, maybe it's a personal project, maybe it's your thesis, maybe it's a product you're working on in your team at work, then it becomes easier. So I definitely +1 on the, like, it's not about quality at the beginning. And then this other thing that always comes up without a doubt is the cringe factor. Okay, like, so many of us get so obsessed with avoiding being seen as cringe, feeling cringe. The idea of having to talk about your work so somebody notices it is just a big ick. And I know there's been lots of studies done on how this shows up for women differently than men. And we know that actually women who are seen as self-promoting are judged more negatively by women and men. So, it is true that there is an inherent negativity bias towards women who are seen to be self-promoting. Men who are self-promoting will be met with much more positivity. So that, that fear is very real. I'm sure we've both got our own kind of internal voices and conversations that we have ourselves to overcome that for us. But what do you have to say to the folks who are like, or the very idea of like branding a person? I think that word also can evoke very strong reactions in people, right? What would you say?
I know that it's a tricky one. I wanted to go back to something you said previously for a second about that documenting a journey, even if it's just little snippets, like, what maybe you're working on a thesis or just how you feel about getting back to work. One of the biggest values I've found is going back to things I wrote 10, even 20 years ago, and just being blown away by how far I've come, and like some of the thoughts I had back then. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and to be able to say, well, yeah, this is how I felt at this age, and just seeing that journey. So if you're looking for a way to measure progress, because sometimes if you're looking for physical numbers like a percentage increase or something, that could take time. But being able to look back on something you've written is a real, I suppose, it's a lead indicator, I call it, something that you can look at and go, yeah, I've made progress. Like, I can't believe this is how I felt 6 months ago. And
also a bit like that.
Yeah. I think it can be really impactful for that. So that's one thing I wanted to say about that. I think with personal branding and putting yourself out there, yeah, I know people feel cringy about it, and I think it's worse depending on the culture you're from. And I live in Scotland, and I feel like Scottish people in particular don't like to do that.
I had to leave. I had to just say,
You
I'm out
you said that's
there,
literally why you left.
judging me.
And it's honestly going back ages, and I remember I shared something with you, a book written in 1973, and even back then, it's just this idea that women should be seen and not heard. And so when you're putting yourself out there, when other women are like, oh, she's really, she's really pushing herself out there. What's she doing that for? Oh my gosh, she wants everyone to notice her. And it's a shame, it really is a shame, because at the end of the day, if we listen to that voice and more women go quiet and are not visible, it's a vicious cycle, because then other women who are maybe thinking about putting themselves out there don't see other women putting themselves out there and think it's not the thing to do to put myself out there, and then they don't. And so we basically go back to the times of Noah and the ark or something, where it's like we're going back and back and back to what it was in the past. Because for me, one of the main encouragements I get is when I see other women sharing what they've done and what things they've accomplished. And that certainly helped me in my life, is seeing other women like me doing things. And I go, oh, well, that's possible, is it? Okay. So that's something I can aspire to. That's somewhere I can get to. So if we listen to that voice that says, oh, you shouldn't put yourself out there, you shouldn't be visible, what we're doing is going back to a time, in the dark ages, where women, we couldn't vote. We couldn't work at one point. And so if you look at the future and you want women to have more say, in politics, in business, in the different tables that are set all over the world, then we have to be visible. We have to have a voice. And so I think some of it is inherent, so people don't even realize they're doing it. I think even women that criticize other women, it might not come out in words, they might just be thinking it, and sometimes they're not even conscious that they're doing it. And it's just the way we've been raised in many ways. Society has said this is how you should be, and so we automatically judge. And I think becoming conscious of it and building that self-awareness could help push that away over time.
And I think it's noticing, when you feel that judgment. I often feel that judgment's telling you something about what you want, right? Or what you feel is missing
Yeah.
from your life when you feel this, who does she think she is? Or look at, it's this like internalized misogyny,
Yeah.
doing the patriarchy's work for it by judging each other. And I think that's also something that we're really intentionally and actively trying to counteract by how we design the bond and how we design our community to be very purposefully supportive. And a lot of women say to us every single bond, like, this is the first time I have ever felt truly supported in a women only space, because many of us will have had experiences, whether at school or with women bosses, like where that has not felt good. And it's something that we are trying to, unpick and help all of us understand that we all play a role in this. Like, we're all perpetuating this norm, even when it's us that go, the family photograph time, oh, I don't want to be in it because, I don't like my ears, or I don't like my tummy. It's like we are physically erasing ourselves from our family's history, from the fear of being judged. And that it makes me sad. And I notice, I'm working all the time to try and notice those patterns in my own self, because, it was only 3 years ago that I changed all my online stuff from a pseudonym to my name. Like, I did all my blogging and all my work under the name Red Jotter, which you will know.
Oh, wow.
Scotland. So Jotter is like a Scottish word for a notebook. And when I say that now, I can see your reaction. People are like, what? Because
I'm stunned. I'm absolutely stunned.
Yeah, and it was really hard for the first 3-4 years of writing online. My face was nowhere to be seen because I was didn't want my ex-boyfriend to see what I was up to. There's always a somebody.
There's a reason.
So, and to be honest, none of them are thinking about what you're doing because they're too busy worrying about what they're doing.
Got their own problems.
Exactly. So it was at one time I didn't want to show my face, and then I had the pseudonym, and then, you know, now I'm, you know, still unlearning and having to work at, like, is it, you know, am I being too much? You know, that's the narrative that's present in throughout my childhood and life. It's like too many ideas, too much talking, too much, and, you know, for others it'll be too little or not enough in the right way, or it's like essentially everybody. There will be people who will not like what you say, who will not like what you contribute, but that for every one person that feels that way, there will be 10 people who will value it and will get a lot of good stuff from your contribution. I'm wondering, what's one thing you think people can do to start them on this journey of being more visible, getting their work in front of the right people, like an action that people could take after they listen to this conversation?
Yeah. It's a really great question, because it seems to be a lot of things that people can do, and I think it can be a bit overwhelming, like, where do I start from? I want to acknowledge Emma, who's written that she's taken a big thing out around, you know, if you care about something, then there are other people that care about it too. And I would argue that that's a starting point, is to believe that. And once you believe that, then you will put the effort into, you know, finding those people, finding where they hang out, understanding the sort of format that they want to consume the content that you want to share, whether that's video, whether that's newsletters, whether that's, you know, write-ups, whether maybe you need to write a book, or maybe it's podcast, whatever that looks like. But I would say the very first step is to believe in yourself, and to believe that what you have to say to the world, that it is important, and that there are people that are literally sitting there waiting to hear what you're saying. And you've maybe been in this situation where somebody comes along, says something, or writes a book, or this happens to me with movies, where I watch a movie and I think, oh my gosh, this whole movie is literally about the entire, you know, last 5 years of my life, or I can't believe that, you know, this is just so accurate in terms of how I feel. Someone says something and you think, you've just captured how I feel. So I believe if there's something that you really care about and you're passionate about, there are people out there that are just literally waiting for you to say that, and for them to react and go, wow, I can't believe she's just captured, you know, they've just captured exactly how I'm feeling and the journey that I'm on, and I want to hear more of this. So I would say that's the first step. Have faith in what it is that you're doing, and then start finding those audiences. And the audience will have different shapes. Don't look to copy other people in terms of their audience and what they're doing, because your audience is likely to be different. They're likely to want to engage differently, and just really commit to identifying like-minded people that want to hear your story.
Yes. I always think of what you're describing as, it's like you're a magnet. So when you think out there, it becomes a magnet, and all the other people who are excited about that come and find you, and people who don't are repelled and go somewhere else. And that's great, because they're not the people you want to be in conversation with. So it becomes almost like a filtering system. And I think my kind of one takeaway for folks who are thinking about becoming more visible, being more intentional with how they're sharing their thoughts, is to say what you think more often. And this is inspired. Cindy Gallup often talks about this. Like, we are so conditioned to not say what we think, either because we have been ignored, made to feel invisible, being a victim of microaggressions, had our ideas stolen. You know, there's a very long list. And you get to a place where you just don't say much. You can't be arsed with the consequences. And so, like, what would happen if every single woman woke up tomorrow deciding, like, I'm going to say what I think 5% more than I currently do? Like, it would change very quickly and very positively. And I think you can practice that in a place where the stakes are fairly low. You know, maybe that's with your friendship group, Maybe it's with some colleagues that you feel very comfortable and brave with. And just start being open to the idea that the reason it feels so scary is because what's that? I forget. I think it was Stephen Pressfield who talks about like the size of the shadow is an indication of the scale of the reward.
Mm.
So it's like the reason it feels so scary is because of the scale of the positivity that could come from it. So I hope that our conversation has inspired you to think about that, to take action. Do tag us in anything you might write or share or do so we can cheerlead and support you. And if you are hungry for more, which I know many of you are, you can join Bond 7, our next 6-week online course at UPFRONT. It starts on June 5th. 6-week online program on all things confidence, power, visibility. And Dr. Yekemi is one of our Bond coaches. So Yekemi, do you want to say a wee bit about what folks can expect from working with you as part of Bond 7?
Yeah, no, the bond overall is just amazing. I wanted to comment on what you said about, people giving me feedback around how this is, the first time they felt really genuinely supported being in a group of women. And I can attest to that, being at the Upfront and Center event back in, I believe it was March. And I just thought, gosh, this is like this. I don't know how you've done it, but every single person, I know, I was just like,
I don't know how you've done it.
what have you done? It's like everyone just drank some like Kool-Aid on their way in, and and just like so supportive, and the vibe was just so positive. So if you join the Bond 7, you get to work with a couple of really amazing people and just work through what it means to be a confident person in today's world, and just start getting rid of those barriers. I love how you described it. I believe it's maybe on the website or some of the wording. It's like a couch to 5K for confidence, and that's exactly what it is. And I'm honored to be part of that journey and to be on the Bond 7 with everyone else, really helping people to not hide their lit up candle, the lit up flame, not to hide it under a table or a bed, and to be able to bring that to the world, to be visible, to be more you, and to be more authentic in everything that you're doing, to have a greater understanding of the value that you bring to the world, and to understand that the consequences of not bringing it to the world, the consequences of hiding it, is actually far worse than whatever you might be afraid of that might happen if you do come out and be more visible. So I'm going to be supporting everyone around that whole personal branding piece, that visibility piece, to make sure that all the amazing stuff that you're learning during Bond 7, that you're able to bring it to the world and just infect everyone with the amazing and positive vibe and energy that you're going to get through that program.
Yes, I can't wait. Stephanie's saying, say what you think more. Thank you so much for giving me permission to think and do that. As women, we often quiet ourselves so much for fear of looking stupid, not being taken seriously. And it's important to go against that and remind ourselves that we are relevant. And with the upfront bond, love is real, it's magical. We would love to welcome you to Bond 7. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Yekemi. Always a
Thank you for having me.
hang out and chat, and look forward to next time.
Bye everyone.
Bye.